We can do all things together through Jesus.
Good evening. Our discussion in our Connect groups today is going to focus on dealing with guilt that we feel as children in the way that we've treated our parents. And if you don't have any guilt, congratulations. But I think the vast majority of us do have to wrestle with this. The material that Steve's put together is going to put an emphasis on a couple of different areas in which we oftentimes feel guilt. One is on how we treated our parents when we were kids during our adolescence. And I'm sure there are many of us who look back and go, boy, I wish I could have been a little kinder to mom and dad when I was a teenager. But the second focus is going to be on how we treat our parents as they grow older, how we deal with them. And that's where I would like to focus our discussion over the next few minutes, is on that latter discussion of how we deal with our parents as they begin to age. You know, we face some real challenges today that I think are kind of unique. A couple of them, and let me delineate. One is, I believe, geographical, and the other is medical. Now, by geographical, here's what I mean. Most of history, mankind has been agrarian. We lived on farms, plots of land, and families had a tendency to cluster together. We would all live in the same house or in a cluster of houses in a given area, and you might have great-grandma and great-grandpa and grandma and grandpa, mom and dad and grandkids and great-grandkids and so on, all in the same geographic area. And that lent itself to the family caring for parents as they got older. Because of the society in which we live today, because of the Industrial Revolution, because of mechanization and farming and so on, we don't have that anymore. There are rare instances in which families remain clustered together physically, geographically, but increasingly, that's pretty rare. Carol and I, we have one child 5.5 hours south. We have one child 4.5 hours north. We have another child 2 hours west, and then one child just in Muskogee. So, our family's very scattered. And I think that's true of most families. And that makes it a real challenge now to provide care for parents when there's that kind of distances that are often involved. And secondly, I think we face a challenge when it comes to increased length of life, and that's a direct result of good medical care. Back in the turn of the 20th century, 1901, average male lived to be 49. You can just about add 30 years to that now. Now that's a blessing. That's a blessing in many ways, but it's also presents a real challenge because the fact of the matter is that 150 years ago, a lot of people just didn't grow old. And many folks do now. It's very common for people to live into their 70s and 80s and 90s. But with that growing older also comes increased health challenges. And those challenges can be huge when it comes to caring for parents when they're now dealing with symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer's, or they've broken a hip or something of that nature. And so I think that we face some challenges today that really haven't been dealt with in the past. Now, what I'd like to do is simply talk for a moment about how important it is, I believe, that we be people who look ahead, who are proactive instead of reactive, and how we deal with the challenges that are presented by parents as they grow older. And I want to address three areas real quickly that I think are important. Number one is financial. Because we're living a lot longer, it takes a lot more money to retire on. And the fact of the matter is that people can be very frugal, they can save, they can plan, and a lot of folks just never made enough money to be able to cover expenses as they live on and on past retirement age. It has nothing to do with them being spendthrifts or irresponsible, it's just a fact. I was reading an article the other day that said that one of the challenges that younger generations are now facing is the fact that there's a good possibility that they are going to be called upon to financially support their parents in their old age. Now, there are some folks who've been blessed financially, and that's not going to be a problem, and good for them. But in many cases, that's simply not the case. My parents were retired for a long time. They had a perfectly adequate income when they first retired, but as the years went by and inflation worked and all that kind of thing, it came to the point where I could tell that they needed help. They wouldn't ask for it, but I went and sat down with them and opened up to them, and they opened up to me. And for years, Carol and I helped to support Mom and Dad. We help to support Carol's mom now. I consider that a privilege, a blessing. I don't see that as a burden in any sense, shape, or form. I am thankful that God's given us the resources to be able to do that. But I feel very good about proactively meeting our parents' needs if those needs are financial as they get older. I would encourage you to think about that and to look at that. And if God's blessed you in such a way that you can bless your parents if they need help, do that. Proactively deal with that. Secondly, I think it's very important that we also look at their emotional needs. Because we are now separated a lot of times by hundreds of miles, maybe thousands of miles, it's difficult to have any kind of physical relationship as far as being able to drop by and sit down in the living room and talk or eat supper. But that doesn't mean we can't communicate. For decades, Carol and I lived 500 miles away from both sets of parents. But for decades, every Thursday morning, I would call my parents unless something drastic came up. And they knew that every Thursday morning they were going to get a phone call. I can still hear Mom answering the phone and saying, "Honey, Dad's on the phone," and Dad would get on the extension, and we would visit. Now, today we have all kinds of wonderful things that communication devices that we didn't have 20 or 30 years ago. Via Facebook and Zoom and all kinds of tools, we can literally see each other. But my point is, don't neglect your parents emotionally. There are ways in which you can remain and should remain in contact with them. And although maybe you can't be with them physically as much as you would like to, you can certainly be with them and keep up with them and remain feeling close to them and them close to you. Proactively pursue that. Thirdly, there's going to come a time as parents age when perhaps physically you can no longer provide the care for them that they need. I think Steve makes an excellent point in his material that if you have to put your parents in a rest home, your dad, your mom, in order for them to be cared for, that doesn't mean you're not caring for them. It means that you are seeing that they are cared for, and that's what's really important, that they receive the care that they need. I really believe that a guiding truth as you make choices about how you're going to see that your parents are physically cared for as they age and become infirm is the principle of Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In dealing with Mom and Dad, Carol's mom, we really try to think about how would we want our children to treat us. And that's how we try to treat them. And I think if you approach it in that way, it helps a lot in making sometimes some very difficult decisions that have to be made, but you can make them in a proactive rather than a reactive way. And again, I really believe that's very, very important. And so, to briefly summarize, when it comes to dealing with our parents and to perhaps prevent or assuage some guilt, one, be financially proactive in doing what you can to see that your parents are properly cared for. Number two, emotionally, do what you can to visit them, keep up with them, meet their needs, keep in contact that way. And thirdly, when it comes to physical care, keep in mind always, what would I want done for me? That's what I want to do for you. I want what is best for you. I think this will be very helpful in dealing with the challenges that come with aging parents. God bless you, and I hope you have a very rich discussion in this very important area this evening. Thank you.
We can do all